I was re-watching that video recently called An Anthropological Introduction to YouTube by Mike Wesch. It's quite a famous video, made about 5 years ago, where this guy is a professor in one of the American colleges, and he's doing a kind of social media project with his students about YouTube. And it was, as I say, it's back in 2008, so it's a slightly different environment that we've got now. And one of the things he talks about on there is what he calls context collapse. And it's something that a few of us have talked about in the past here. This idea that, you know, when you make a video on YouTube, you don't know who's looking at it. You look into a webcam, or you do what I'm doing now, look into your flip cam, and you don't really know who's seeing what you're doing. And if you don't know who's looking at what you're doing, you don't know what history they're bringing to it, you don't know what information they have, effectively you don't know what conversation you're participating in. That's effectively what happens, isn't it? Which means that there's no your words are deprived of context, or your actions are deprived of context, and other contexts rush in to fill the gap. You know, whoever watches your video brings their context with them, their conversation with them, and and whatever you say becomes part of that conversation. So that you know, what usually happens in conversation, of course, is there's a shared context. Participants have a shared set of assumptions, a shared set of premises underpinning that, possibly a shared history, which makes the conversation, makes each contribution be understandable in that sense. When context collapses, like it does here, that isn't possible, and all kinds of things emerge as a result of that. And I think it's changed actually a little bit, but just to stay with that for a minute. I mean, I was asked to write something a couple of years ago for a research project up at Bristol University about, well, it was to do with data about the creative arts and contemporary arts within social media particularly. And I was asked to just write a few words about YouTube, and one of the things one of the points I made there was exactly that. You know, that when you put a piece of work out there, if an artist puts a piece of work out there on YouTube, the context disappears. And I talked about that in kind of positive terms. I think I described it as a bracing experience. But it does cause problems. You know, I mean, the example I gave in that piece of writing was of performance artists who do body-based work. You know, who use their own bodies in their practice, and things that would not be out of place at all in a gallery or as part of a public conversation to do with, you know, in the arts, you know, with people who are part of that conversation, who've got some history in that conversation. That same practice put on YouTube tends to get a series of, you know, what the fucks, or comments about the artist's body, or just gets flagged as pornography. You know, those kind of things happen because the usual context for that kind of practice is stripped away. It's effectively collapsed. Fucking hell, I'm walking up a hill and it's hard work. But one of the things I've been thinking about recently, partly because of just the way that YouTube has evolved since 2008 when Mike Wesch did that video, and even over the last couple of years since I did that bit of writing, is I'm not quite sure that's as true as it was. And I think it's down to two things. Firstly, I think it's down to what's sometimes called the filter bubble, which is the way that information is filtered before it arrives at on your channel page or on your subscriptions list. You know, as Google has refined the algorithms for how the pages dynamically reconstruct themselves according to your past, according to what you've looked at, liked, favorited in the past. The kinds of things that make it in front of your eyeballs these days tends to be much more like the stuff you've seen in the past. Now that's a negative. It means you're not exposed to new ideas as much, but at the same time it does mean that a context starts to form around your viewing habits, doesn't it? What you've seen in the past, what you're looking at now is always, you know, assuming that you're just kind of surfing randomly, or you're just relying on your subscriptions and you're not, you know, going out of your way to find stuff. It's actually much harder to be confronted by things which challenge you and which provoke a what the fuck response. It's more likely that you are participating in a context which gives a background to the information that you're looking at right now. You know, it's very rare I accidentally come across at least, something I genuinely don't have some kind of purchase on. Occasionally that happens, but very rarely. And the second thing is just to do with numbers. You know, YouTube is working, has cleaned out its processes a lot lately. Most of our subscriber numbers will have fallen as they've been pruned. Our videos get fewer views because of the way the revised YouTube algorithms push featured channels and monetized channels to the fore. So those of us who are doing this vlogging thing, I think it's pretty fair to say, get probably a third of the views that we were getting a couple of years ago. Certainly in my case and with the people I know. And again, a feature of that, although we kind of tend to perceive it as a negative because we're hooked on numbers, aren't we? At the same time, the positive aspect of that is that it's far more likely that the people who are looking at your videos are people who've got some kind of history either with you as an individual, so they understand the background from which your ideas are emerging, or they're part of a loose, porous network of channels that provides a kind of self-reinforcing context for the work that's happening. So again, although my view counts are down, I guess as a direct result of that I get far less what the fucks, and, you know, even on my more challenging videos, you know, the ones that use images and actions rather than words, which used to get a lot of adverse or at least quizzical comments, tend to get far less of those, you know, even by percentage of the lower numbers, which is interesting. So yeah, so context collapse, I suppose, is that the question, is there a reversal going on of context collapse? Is context kind of reasserting itself just through the mechanisms of YouTube's algorithms steering us towards something that's approximating community? I hesitate to use that word, but something that approximates communities of interest, not diverse communities, not necessarily always healthy communities, but is, as I say, context reasserting itself. So I've got all the panting, I'm walking up a steep hill. Anyway, it's a beautiful morning here in sunny Cornwall.